Hey guys, what's pooping? Chess Noob here. In today's video, instead of doing a regular blitz match, I decided to do an informational video. This is directly off of chess.com, which is a great website, which you can learn a lot of stuff from. You can play people online, and they have a lot of good content. So today, I wanted to clear up some of the confusion that many people have when they're starting chess. And this is especially about openings. People can't find what suits their style of play. So yeah, I'm going to be trying to help you guys with that today. This is called the perfect opening, and I'll be reading these out loud throughout the video. There really is no perfect opening, but that is just what we call any opening where you get all your pieces into the game, control the center, and keep your king safe. Every piece controls more of the board when it is placed in the center, which is why most games begin with white and black battling for control of all important areas of the board. Alright, so in this, on the board right now, there's just a setup of white's pieces, and this essentially is a very good layout that you want to have, or position. Like as it says, all of white's pieces are involved in the battle, his king is safe, and the most important part of the board, the center, is firmly under his control. Perfect. Alright, in this example, we're going to see two different ways to think about the center. Black occupies the center square, e5, and controls the center square, d4. While white controls the center squares, e4 and d5. Notice that he has not actually occupied the center yet. Black continues to both occupy and control the center squares. White sets up a similar formation with his other bishop, placing a bishop on one of the longest diagonals of the board. Okay, when you're placing the bishop on the longest diagonal, this is called a fianchettoed bishop. So black starts getting his pieces out and supports his center pawns. This is a very common type of play for black, and yeah, both players are not doing anything wrong right now. White completes the second fianchetto. So after 4 moves for both sides, we can see the two different approaches to the center. Black is both occupying and controlling the center squares, while white has some center control, but has not actually occupied the center yet. We should slightly prefer black's position, but as long as white eventually occupies some central territory, his position should be fine. Sorry for the other noise out there. By far, the most important principles in the opening is to develop your pieces. This simply means to get them in the game. Preferably, they should always try to develop to good squares, central squares, or squares that attack the center. Which is exactly what white is doing in the board right now. Black, instead, has his knight on a6 on the edge of the board, which you should never do. I mean, unless you have a good reason, but in this position, white has 3 pieces developed, and is both controlling and occupying the center. Black has only 2 pieces developed, and they aren't on particularly good squares. Yeah, exactly like I said. Okay, now, the bishop that was on c4 takes the pawn on f7. Now, this may seem like a crazy move, because he's sacrificing a very important piece, which is worth 3 points. Usually, such a sacrifice so early in the game is not advisable, but in this case, black has played such bad moves that white's attack is immediately winning. Black's only choice is to accept a sacrifice, because he can't move anywhere else because he's stuck on e8. Now his king is very exposed and vulnerable to further attack. So a way to follow up on this position is that white brings his knight to e5, and now he's checking the king, and at the same time, he's actually he's giving his queen on d1 space to move. And he has 3 choices of where to move the king: e8, e6, or f6. Unfortunately, as you'll see, all of them end up in checkmate. So if the king moves to f6, the queen will move to f3, which is a checkmate. Oh, sorry, it's not a checkmate. But it's a check, and the king is that you see that the king is running around the board, and white just has so much development and tempo that he can continue to attack black's king. And now after queen plays f5, it is almost over for black. Now this is black's only move, king d6. So now the only other move that black has after knight b5, black has no moves. So this is checkmate. And notice how white is still occupying and controlling the center. And that's why it is such an important thing to do when you're playing chess. The third main opening principle, after developing your pieces and controlling the center, is to protect your king. This is greatly emphasized. The reason for this is obvious. You don't want your king to be in danger of getting checkmated when the game has barely even started. We saw what happened to black in the last lesson. If you watch some Grandmaster games, not occasionally, like very rarely, some Grandmasters do lose in like 6 moves. And it's because they're not following up on opening principles. This is a position from an old opening called the Evans Gambit. We'll talk more about gambits later, but basically, white's idea is to sacrifice a few pawns in order to develop all of his pieces as quickly as possible. Now, the white king castles. White takes time to make sure his own king is safe before he does anything further. Black takes the pawn on c3, and this is a greedy move because he is neglecting both his development and his king safety. And you'll see that bad stuff can happen if he does this. Or he or she, whatever. Now black is in trouble. His f7 square is weak. Remember that this is the weakest square in black's uncastled king position, and under direct threat of bishop takes on f7 with check. White is going to have free and easy development from here on out, and he won't have to worry about his king. While black, after taking all those pieces, now his king is in very grave danger. I just realized something. It says now black is in trouble. His f7 square is weak. I think chess.com just characterized black as a man. I have no idea. Okay, well, this is just emphasizing on not forgetting your king, because essentially, if your king isn't safe, you should always consider defense as well as offense. But if you focus on offense too much, you're forgetting about the piece that's the most important, that decides everything, the king. So sometimes in the opening, there are tempting opportunities to capture hanging pieces. Sometimes this is a good idea, because winning material is one of the best things you can do in a chess game. But don't forget about your king. It is the most important piece, so keep it safe. Count the material. Who is ahead? Now look for hanging pieces. Can you take anything for free? Now look at your king. Is it safe yet? After you've thought about all 3 of these things, decide on the best move. Okay, whatever. I'll just do something random. You know what? I don't have time to do this. Okay, so castling. Yes, that was the best move. Which is actually, you could infer from the passage, from the text. Excellent judgment. You are already ahead 2 points. It's time to play it safe. Black still has a large advantage, and you don't need that free rook anyway. Remember, you should never be greedy. Always look at the board. Now we're going to go over some openings for white. Some are better than others, but all openings are playable. Alright, I guess they want us to start off like this. Alright. So this is one of the 2 best first moves for white, the other one being d4. White occupies a center square, controls another center square, and prepares to develop his bishop and a queen. What more could you want from a move? Alright, now we're going to go over some openings for black. Now we're going to look at all of the black's first move options. Remember, these are just the beginnings of openings. Remember that since black moves second, he has slightly less room to experiment in the opening. And some of the moves we're going to examine are simply terrible. Once you try a move, back up and try another. If you try e5, you will need to click review this lesson in the text to go through the other moves listed instead. Wait, I don't even understand what that was. Yes, okay. So e4, e5 is highly recommended. Alright, so let's continue. The famous 4-move checkmate. Okay. I've been playing chess for a long time now, and every time I go into a tournament, it's kind of sad because so many people play the 4-move checkmate, which is so easy to defend, but so many people still fall for it. So I hope that with this lesson, you guys will be perfect. Like, you guys will not fall for this trap. Alright, this is actually one of the most dreaded of all openings, the 4-move checkmate. Against proper defense from black, this opening is just a silly trap for white that actually breaks a very important opening principle. Never develop your queen until your minor pieces have been developed. But it is being displayed here in part to teach you what not to do and how you should stop it. So yeah, the basic moves: e4, e5, bishop c4, knight c6. I mean, they're not bad moves. They're all good moves. Now, with queen going to h5, it's threatening one important square, which is f7. And here's where the silly trap begins. White brings out his queen way too early, but this is very dangerous. Like I said, f7 is now targeted twice and only defended once. Now black has to get in defensive mode and play a move like g6, blocking the attack. Instead, he makes a huge blunder, which is knight f6. And from a point of view, it may look like a regular move, because it's attacking the queen, and it's attacking the queen. What else would you want? It looks logical, but black neglects the fact that f7 is being attacked twice. So if the queen takes on f7, it's checkmate. And now this is actually how most of 4-move checkmates go. So please do not fall for this. It's very easy to find out. You just need to sit down and think about what your opponent's doing. Alright, so now this is called a copycat trap. Lots of beginners start copycat their opponents, thinking that it'll reach an equal position, but that is completely wrong. It does not work. So if white plays knight f3, a basic simple development move, and black copycats him, even though this is called an opening called a Petrov or Russian defense, played by Vishwanathan Anand, it can eventually turn out bad if you play it wrongly. Now, after knight takes on e5, and black, copycatting white, takes back on e5, now white has a strong move, taking advantage of the lineup of the e-file of the knight on e4 and the king on e8. That move is queen e2. Now black's knight is attacked. So after, say that the black knight retreats, thinking it's safe, but now he runs into even bigger trouble. See, now as you can see, the queen and the king are lined up, and the only thing that is blocking them from discovered check is the knight. So if the knight moves to c6, the king is in check, and at the same time, the queen is being attacked. So black obviously cannot escape, he can't move anywhere, and he can't take any pieces. So his only choice is to block the check. Now he has two different ways of doing this. The queen can go to e7, or the bishop can go to e7. Either way, black loses a queen. So after the move bishop e7, black loses his queen. This is another opening trap and the final opening lesson of this course. This one is a little bit more complicated, but is just as important to know. So white starts off with d4, which is another great move aside from e4. I mean, is just as much as popular. Black responds in the same way. So d4, d5. The Queen's Gambit is a very common and strong opening. We'll learn about more of these gambits in the advanced openings course. Now, this opening is actually it's played a lot when you get to the higher levels. Even grandmasters play this, like Hikaru Nakamura, Wesley So. All these people play the Queen's Gambit. And Black, instead of capturing on c4, which is a part of the Queen's Gambit, decides to play e6, which is a good move. But this is also the most common move. It's called the Queen's Gambit Declined, or the QGD. And so White will play a normal developing move, knight to c3, and Black will respond to knight to f6. So now Bishop will play g5. This is more normal development. Keep in mind, though, that White has not developed any kingside pieces. So now Black will play knight to d7. It's not the most common move, but perfectly playable. Here, White has several options. Knight f3, e3 are the most common moves. White opts for the exchange variation. This is a perfectly good opening, but he's about to follow up with a big blunder. The reason why White plays d5, thinking that if Black takes back with the e-pawn, the knight on c3 can simply capture the d5 pawn because the knight is pinned to the queen. But we'll see that's not the case. So after Black does capture, White captures back. And so now this is the move. I recommend you guys to pause it and try to find it. So the move is knight takes on d5. Right now, Black's queen is completely vulnerable. It's probably, yeah, it is gonna be captured. So after White captures the queen on d8, Black has a very nice move here. And that move is bishop to b4. Now he puts the White king in check. And right now the White king cannot escape from the check or capture the piece or capture the bishop. So his only move is to block it. And the only piece that can do that is the queen. So now the queen is offering itself up too. So after the bishop takes, the king is in check, so it has to move. And the White king will take the bishop. Now, since it's Black's move, he can simply take the bishop on d8. If you look at the board for a second, both sides have two rooks. Looks like they have an equal amount of pawns, but Black is up by a whole piece, and that's why this variation is terrible for White. Thank you guys for watching. Peace out.